Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Two Deep. Anthony Knockrunner here, alongside John Kemper, my co-host, as we get ready. Big news in high school Class AA football. We're going to break it down here tonight. And, John, I'll tell you what, man, I didn't think we'd be doing episode 2 this quickly. We kind of planned episode 2 for when the first day of practices were, but obviously with Thursday's news, we had to get an episode in.
Yeah, we were talking, after the first episode and thinking about next Friday when everybody was getting into two-a-days and all that. And then literally yesterday, it all starts coming down that they're going to cancel non-conference games and shift the schedule, and everybody's going to start around this on September 11th. So thought we'd get something out. So here we are.
First off, I want to say thank you to everyone that's already followed or liked the Facebook and Twitter pages. Also, thanks for watching the first episode so far. John, we've got some great numbers with that first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you guys, and keep talking about it, keep spreading it. We want to keep this show going, and hopefully, if we have football, we're going to have a show. So
absolutely. And hey guys, listen, if you got questions, hit us up on the Facebook, on the Twitter, the Two Deep MT. Also, check us out. You can check us and get us questions, comments on our email the Two Deep MT at gmail.com. You can email us your questions, comments, all those types of things. Obviously, a lot to break down here. Let's just start with that, as you mentioned, John. AA scrapping the non-conference games. Were you surprised this quickly? We knew this was an option, but you surprised this quickly that we're scrapping them?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I wasn't surprised necessarily that they scrapped them, but the timing seemed very quick, because we're talking, 10 days ago, they sent out the guidelines and the tiers. So you just kind of thought that they're going to get into practice and see how things go. But then everything started coming down, and then you end up having the 2 non-conference games canceled and delaying the start of the season, because we're now in tier 2 for those 5 tiers that we talked about in show 1.
Well, here's the thing, John. It seems like, and I could be wrong, maybe they have updated it, but recent stories suggest that they have not moved from tier 1 into tier 2. So that's been kind of the question here as well, even for me, because like I said, you're kind of right. Tier 2, at least the way their tiers were set out, the way we talked about it, technically it seems like we would be in tier 2 at this point. Now, again, maybe it's just AA because they're making this move. I haven't heard anything from A's or B's at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the clarification and good point. I think this is driven more not necessarily by the MHSA. I think it's driven by more the AA. And the AA is moving into that tier 2. But you're right, MHSA hasn't moved into tier 2, because if you do move into tier 2 with the MHSA, everybody moves into tier 2, not just the AA.
And I think that's important to remember, too, because the AA, we're talking about all the cities, the major population areas in Montana where, we're talking about the A's and the B's, a little bit smaller communities as well, because maybe they are able to get all their conference and non-conference games in their regular schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from A on down, obviously the attendance goes down just based on population, but right. You still have the room around the fields to have people. So I could see A, B, and C still being able to play a season. And AA, I do believe we can play a season. It's just going to look like we talked about in the first show. It's going to look a lot different, obviously, and crowd size is going to be different. And as far as sidelines go, you're not going to have sidelines with 75 players. You're just not going to have it. You're going to have sidelines with, I've heard numbers as low as 40 on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking about this the other day, is roster limits. And I don't know if we addressed that in the last episode. I don't remember.
We did.
But we did. Okay. So
we took guesses on what it would be.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was going to say roster limits are going to be kind of interesting here, especially for road teams. But it's an interesting point as well because, yeah, I mean, like I said too, I mean, we also have to see, I think the other thing we have to remember is the ADs, along with the health departments in these respective cities, all have to be on the same page. And then at the same time, we have to try and get all the ADs and all those health departments on the same, at least wavelength, maybe not on the same page, but on the same wavelength of some sort.
Yeah, you don't know how much compromise there'll be between the two and how much health departments, what they say is it law or will there be a discussion between, ADs and schools and in cities? And that's, that's yet to be seen. We don't know.
I was about to say, we still don't really know what ADs are going to decide to do aside from scrapping the non-conference games, but what they're going to do about fans, protocols, all those types of things, because the MHSA is kind of leaving that more to the individual schools. Yeah. So, like you said, I mean, it surprised me, because I think going by last Monday, I was like, all right, this is great. We got guidelines. We're going to move forward. We have that intention. And then at the same time, this kind of, it doesn't put fear in me, but it does give me caution.
Yeah, not fearful, but definitely concerned. And it's, we talked about this too, that, you and I are pretty optimistic. So some people aren't so optimistic, and that's fine, but we come from a more optimistic side. So we were hoping to stay in tier 1 and go through the whole deal. Of course, we knew that this was a possibility, and we know there's a possibility that there won't be a season in the fall, that there could be one in the spring or a shortened season. There's all sorts of possibilities out there. So we know that, but it's just there. I mean, a lot of concern, and, so I think for players and coaches, a lot of concern, and I think some anxiety, and especially for the juniors last spring that are now seniors, and they watched what the seniors went through, and now they might go through that too. A lot of frustration, a lot of anger, and a lot of anxiety with it, because you're watching, possibly your last chance to play football slip away.
Yeah, and that's what really would be very disappointing. I mean, and I'm sure the ADs and everybody's trying to work on this and trying to let these kids be able to play a game, because I mean, I've already seen a story out of Washington saying players are already depressed because the season got moved in, I believe in Washington, they're moving football to spring. They're moving a lot of those sports over to spring. We're already seeing California. They're going to go in December and all those types of things. I just don't know if we have those options here in Montana. I mean, John, I've only been here 4 years, but I've seen enough Montana winter to know between March, May, February, I mean, it's any guess what happens with the weather.
Yeah, from March to May, you don't really know. You hope for good weather, but here's the thing about weather though. The reality is when playoffs hit late mid-October to late October and into the playoffs, the teams know that they could be playing in snow or really cold temperatures. So I don't think that's going to bug them as bad. What could be bad though is if you have a decent winter wherever and you have a couple feet of snow sitting on your football field and you got to get that taken care of just for practicing. That creates some challenges, but we're not there yet. But that's definitely something that they have to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Like I said, I don't think we're at a point where we're going to be extremely alarmed yet. Obviously, we just now have a couple more weeks, buys us some time. Again, the biggest thing is we really do need to see the numbers go down. And if they start to really do that, then we're all going to start feeling, I think, even a little bit more optimistic about when we try to get started in the middle of September.
Yeah, and you are seeing the numbers in Montana. They are leveling off. There's some good sites that you can follow and watch the arc, and it has leveled off in the last about week and a half. So what we're looking for, hopefully here in the next 2 weeks, is for that leveling off to actually start going down and trending down, and that'll be positive. So, but we've had, as a result of this, we've lost games. We don't have games at the end of this month. We would be kicking off the season 3 weeks from Friday. And instead we're looking at September 11th. So we lose non-conference games. Do you see them what do you see teams doing in place of those non-conference games? Anything, or do they just make their practices longer, a longer time frame, or what?
I think it's interesting. Unfortunately, I wish we could say that maybe we'd see a plan where maybe we move up the conference games a little bit so that way we can afford ourselves 2 weeks to, just in case something happens. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe even to potentially put those non-conference games at the end. I know it seems silly, but, to get those 9 games in, I mean, 7 games is great. I'll take 7 games if we can't, get 9, but it'd be kind of cool if we did. I'm very curious to see what teams are going to do here, because From what I've heard, is a lot of teams are going to meet with their staffs, meet with their ADs, and they're going to go over plans this weekend to make a decision about whether or not they're going to start practices on Friday. John, you've spoken to several coaches. What are you hearing about whether or not coaches are going to start next Friday or delay it?
Well, I haven't talked to a lot, but I've just a couple schools, Helena and Capital, as of now are planning to start next Friday. Helena is going to actually get rid of their two-a-days and then split up the groups more, so there's more, more room on the field, so they can, filter in those players a lot easier throughout the day instead of having to, cram them into two-a-days on that. Some things I was thinking about. Do you try scrimmaging? Maybe a team in your city? I don't think so. I don't see that happening. There could be an opportunity, though, for players or for teams to be able to at least have some practices under the lights of their home stadium. So that might be a good option.
Yeah, as I say, you got some possibilities here, and you just made me think of one because, again, we don't know what's going to happen with Class A and Class B. Essentially, I don't maybe see necessarily scrimmages, but maybe some pass skellies, some 7-on-7s. Essentially, because again, that's the thing that I'm kind of concerned about. I'm sure coaches are thinking about it, just the burnout. I mean, 4 weeks of practice, that's essentially an NFL training camp almost.
Yep.
And so, sure the coaches are thinking about that. They're worried about the burnout at this point, being one case. I do think, though, and it's something you kind of brought up too, I do think that the coaches could also use this as an advantage, because this does give you more time to spend on individual work, because we know that essentially they didn't really get the springtime to do a lot of install. Summertime, there weren't really any camps to test anything. Maybe some teams did some 7-on-7s. This allows teams, with that 4 weeks, again, obviously you're going to have to condense it. They're going to have to do some things differently. Got to keep the kids engaged. A lot of games, maybe have a day where practices is just really, really light. But they could really use this time for more individual work, and the kids could really kind of, put their focus on honing that craft. You could spend, more time individually than having to spend with team, essentially. And so there is that possibility. Again, and that's the other thing about this too with the schedule. Even less room for error. I mean, the non-conference games didn't really hurt you, so they were really kind of helpful to be tune-up games, essentially. They did count win-loss record, but as they weren't really going to hurt you in the conference standings. And now you're starting right off the bat here with conference, and you got to get off to a good start.
You have to be out of the blocks going. There's no waiting around. So, I don't think there'll be scrimmages. I mean, I think the teams that start next Friday could be at more of an advantage, because they're going to be able to spend more time as a team for school, instead of schools that maybe start 2 weeks after that or a week. One thing I'm kind of thinking of is, I know that month is long, but these kids, they haven't been at school since March in a class. Yeah. They have seen each other, I'm sure, outside of school and during the summer. They've had one training camp. So I think these players will actually probably handle that month pretty well. And part of it is because they just, they're getting into some sort of routine, with playing, and then with whatever school is going to look like, whether it's in class or online or a hybrid. So I think the players are actually going to be pretty resilient on that. And I'll tell you what, though, by September 11th, they're going to be ready to go for sure.
I was about to say, I would imagine they're going to be chomping at the bit by the time we get to that, first and second week of September. And we've got some pretty interesting matchups, and we'll get more to those with later shows as we get closer to that time frame. But yeah, I can only imagine those kids will be ready, especially if you're talking about where, you are practicing. Maybe some teams do start practicing next Friday and they keep going all the way to that point. They will be ready. And it'll be interesting to see on Friday night what kind of results, because I think you're going to see kind of that experiment of which one started early, which one started later, who really benefited on week, essentially what is week 3, but will be week 1.
Yeah. The one downside to doing that 4 weeks, if you do that, potential for injuries.
True.
So you do have to watch out for that on it. But, we talked about being alarmed and concerned, with what could be coming down. Another concern I have is just the fact that, for the AA, we are pretty much sitting in tier 2. we'd have no room if we slide to tier 3 and we start losing conference games at that point. So there's not a lot of play there that can happen if they start moving into that next tier and September 11th games gets canceled and maybe they cancel a couple more games. We're really close to that line.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think, a lot of coaches are just going to be nervous, but that's the thing here, John, is I think even if we get to September 11th and we get those first games in, then we go to the next week, we get that second week of conference games in, I think everyone's going to have to understand and operate under this thought. We're always going to be under the threat of seeing the season canceled at any point, even if we get it started for 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, we get it all in, even the postseason. I think there is that possibility that, and it's not just football, it's all the sports, there is that possibility that, you play Friday night and all of a sudden Monday, maybe not.
Yeah, and a big thing in that is, and we've talked about it before, but team plays on Friday, on Sunday, a player on one of the teams tests positive for COVID. What happens with those two teams at that point? My fear is that if a player tests positive on a team, their season's shut down probably for 2 weeks. So that affects two teams, the two teams that they're going to play. And then if there's another, you have that. I'm kind of looking at that like with what the MLB's having happen with like the Marlins and the Cardinals and stuff. The difference with this is you have 16 teams. If you have, 5 of those teams go out over the course of 3 weeks, that affects pretty much every team in the AA. And at that point, how are you even playing? Then you might go to like a round robin format and you're just playing, just playing games on Friday as they make up schedules as they go.
As if they decide they want to make up schedules as they go. Because like I said, ultimately we don't know for sure if that's going to be an option for ADs and head coaches.
Yeah, they may just cancel the season. So
one thing I want to get to as well is postseason possibilities here. Something that I've looked at, Oregon's essentially gotten rid of their postseason. When they do move to the spring, they're going to just go to a bowl game type deal. No state champion, it sounds like, over in Oregon. Washington, California, I don't think they've gotten that far in the details. Some of the states that have already decided to push football to the spring. Virginia is on the same page, have not heard any plans on what they're going to decide to do in terms of a playoff. So postseason possibilities for us, do you see a situation where the MHSA or the ADs themselves for Class AA decide to say, okay, we're going to shorten the postseason as well, just to be able to get games in and to be able to get a postseason in?
I could see that. Explain to me what that would look like. Would it be just one game postseasons where everyone plays kind of like a quote unquote bowl game and then that's it? Or do they play like 2 weeks or what?
I feel like there you can go with a couple different options. One that I think of is maybe you kind of go back to what they used to do in Class AA, which was you take the top 4 teams, top 2 out of the East, top 2 out of the West. You have a semifinal. Whoever wins those games plays in the state championship. So essentially you'd have 2 weeks, and then maybe what you say to everybody else that didn't qualify as the top 4, all right, you get a bowl game and you get to play one more game of the season and then you're done. I could see that as I don't know if they'd even consider it, but I could see that as a possible alternative, as just a thought to throw out there.
Yeah, I could see the shortened allowances for teams to be in the 4 and 4. I don't see giving everybody an extra game like the following week. My thought is that they will try to do the playoffs just like how they have it planned, and they'll see if they can get through it that way. And instead of trying to make that change, we already have a precedent set that they're not afraid to stop a tournament or stop a playoffs or, stop playoff games based on what happens with COVID. We saw it in the state tournament in basketball last year. So I think they're going to try to get it going and go as far as they can, and hopefully we make it to the end.
Yeah, like I said, that probably does seem more like the logical answer. But I said just, tossing spitballing out ideas here, spitball, because I think if nothing else, I have to imagine that these AD meetings, and again, I have no idea. I don't get any special messages from the ADs and in their meetings, but I have to imagine the ADs are trying to think of anything outside the box, trying to come up with alternative solutions, so that way they've got a contingency for a contingency for a contingency.
This is what I believe about the ADs. I believe this about the school districts. I believe this about the MHSA. And I would even go so far as to say for the health departments in the counties. They don't want to cancel games. They don't want to cancel seasons. They want these kids to be able to play. And I think they're going to do everything possible to get them to play. I think we saw that in the spring with MHSA taking, as much time as they took to decide to cancel spring sports. I mean, they waited to the very last moment on that. So the one thing we don't have is AD saying, who cares? If we play, fine. If we don't play, I mean, they're passionate about not only the sport, but they're passionate about their teams. They're passionate about their players and their programs, and they want to see those kids play. And another thing with ADs and coaches, especially, in a lot of cases, they're teachers. They see the damage that's being done on a psychological level to the kids. And they see the struggles that the kids are going through their whole lives turned upside down. And we don't need to talk about if they're, if kids are tough or not tough, or, back in the Depression, they just sucked it up. That doesn't even matter here. What they are seeing, kids that they are struggling with anxiety, they are struggling with depression. I mean, they're struggling with those things, and the ADs and the coaches see that. And I think that spurs them on to try to do everything possible to make sure these kids have a season.
And I mean, that's the thing here, is just to allow these kids to play the game that they love. All the work they put in, because they've already been putting in a ton of work during the summer already. And it's not just football players, it's basketball players, it's volleyball players, it's golfers. I mean, all the sports have been putting in a lot of time as well. And we just want to see the kids. And we reiterated that back in the first show. And we're going to reiterate it again. We want the kids to be able to play the game. Obviously, John and I are very lucky. We get to do play-by-play for these teams and for these players, and we get to call their names and be a part of in a way of all the exciting action that goes on. But it's not about us. It's about them and what they're able to do, and allowing them the opportunity to let their hard work get paid off. Because, a coach said it to me, I think it was either last week or earlier this week, what you did your senior year is what you remember. I remember, that's exactly what I remember, wearing that jersey right behind me. I remember what happened my senior year.
The Buccaneers one?
No, not the Buccaneers one, the green one.
Oh, I can't see the name on it because there's all these media tags on it. Trying to show off Mr. Big Shot. Look at all my media tags.
Yeah. Hey, just adding some decoration,
Okay, I keep mine in
either way, just to allow the kids their senior year, because that's what they do talk about. So, again, we'll just have to see what happens. But like I said, we want the kids to play.
Well, and you also have kids, seniors that, they have some offers from colleges, but some don't. Some colleges want to see what these kids are going to do in their senior year, and being able to play is going to be able to show them that.
Absolutely. I think of kids that have had seasons, and all of a sudden that changes for them. Maybe they weren't being looked at as much their junior year, but have a great senior year. All of a sudden, it's a different story. Whether that's for Montana or Montana State, or for one of the frontier schools who play great football.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have these two non-conference games for every team just wiped off the books.
Mm-hmm.
Were there some of those games that you looked at that you were looking forward to seeing or reading about or seeing highlights from?
There were some interesting games, no question about it. There's a lot of interesting matchups. Obviously, brand new year. We don't know what to expect. You're basing it off last year. In some cases you could do that because we do know the good teams from last year that have a lot coming back. But one game I want to start with, and then I'll toss it over to you. But obviously, the game I was going to call, Flathead at Bozeman. First, wanted to see what that new stadium was going to be like, because I remember what it was a couple of years ago and how cold it was in that press box.
I've called the game there. I called the playoff game there. It's comfortable. It's nice. They did an excellent job. You'll be jealous.
So, yeah, I'm a little jealous that you've already been there. But at the same time, too, I want to see what the reigning champs have. Obviously, Iden's a very good football player. They've got some great defensive players as well. Want to see what they have and what this Bozeman team is going to look like. going into this season? Are they going to be a team that's going to be, once again, a contender to repeat as state champions? I look at the team that I cover and the team that I call games for, Flathead. Obviously, didn't end the season the way they wanted to last year. I thought they were starting to play better football as the end of the year kind of went on. And there's a lot of new names, a lot of new faces. So I wanted to see how this team going into this year with the roster they've constructed, second year under Coach Matt Upham. They've got some great players. I think of guys like Tommy Wells, and I think of Nolan White. That's a name to keep an eye on from the linebacker position. And then I think of a guy like Jackson Barrett, who's, I think, under the radar and could be a real big star in the AA this year. But for Flathead, for me, it was just a lot of new names and the possibility of a lot of really good talent football players going up against a pretty good football team and seeing what happens. Because that's the excitement with that week one game is that possibility. Okay, what kind of team do you have? So my first game, we're going to get to a couple of them. We only get about three here. But my first game, Bozeman versus Flathead. John, what's your first one?
Well, I think you always go to the ones you call first. So I don't put these in any particular order, but it's the one I'm going to see first, and that's Helena versus CMR. You know, CMR, new coach, Dennis Morris, taking over the program. This game was going to be played up at CMR or up at Great Falls at the stadium there. You know, Helena, I believe for the past four seasons, Helena and CMR have opened the season against each other, and Helena's won all four of those. So it would have been just fun to be able to see what, you know, Coach Morris has been able to do during this off season leading up to this season. And we'll get to see it. It'll just be a couple weeks later than normal. And obviously CMR, a lot of tradition, a lot of history and everything. And then Helena High, you know, some high expectations for them. They played a lot of younger players last year. And, you know, Caden Hewitt, their quarterback, was a sophomore. Now he's a junior moving into that position. And, you know, they bring back nearly their entire defense, and, you know, they just got a lot of tools and a lot of weapons. And I think, you know, Helena is one of those teams that's, you know, in the upper tiers of the teams in the state, and not because I call them, they just seem to be poised to have a really good year. So I was really looking forward to seeing that one.
Another game for me that I was really interested in seeing was Great Falls and Sentinel to start things off. I'm hearing, obviously, we know with Sentinel, with what they have, Jace Klusowicz, TJ Roush, Dylan Rollins, number one recruit out of Montana right now, the big kid on the O-line. Imagine he's going to be playing some D-line as well. They just got a lot of talented football players. Gino Leonard, their linebacker as well. They've already got a couple guys that have committed to the Grizz. So, again, they've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of talent, no question about it. They're going to be one of the teams that we talk about as those contenders for the state championship. But Great Falls as well is a team that I'm hearing a lot of really good things about. They're really happy with some of the kids that they've got coming up. They're going to get a lot more playing time. They're going to be starters this year. Obviously, they're going to have a new quarterback, but so is, 12 out of the 16 teams in the AA. They're going to have new quarterbacks. Starting this year. Great Falls is going to be one of them, but they do have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of speed. They have a lot of talent. So Great Falls is a team that I'm really interested in. There's been a couple of coaches that have told me out of the Eastern Conference already, they're looking out for Great Falls because they think Great Falls has got a pretty good squad this year. You go back to last year, they gave Billings West a whole lot of fits and lost to them 14-7 late in the year. So I think Great Falls would have been really interesting, especially against Sentinel and all that talent. You know, just how would have that game played out?
Yeah, I think one for me is Gallatin and Hellgate. It would have been Gallatin's first game. You know, we're still waiting, Gallatin, for your helmet. So if you could get that out, we want to see it. But if you're doing some cool presentation, we understand, and it'll be awesome when you actually do unveil it. But yeah, to see it, you know, how often do you get to see a brand new high school open up their football season? I mean, that only happens once to every school. So I was looking forward to seeing that. And you know, Gallatin, you know, sure, there's going to be a learning curve and there's going to be a growth curve on it, but I think they might take off faster than a lot of schools, given, you know, where they are and you know, the success that the Bozeman program has had for years and years and years, not just in football, but almost every sport. And, you know, some of those some of those students now are going to be funneling over to Gallatin. So I would expect Gallatin maybe to jump up a little bit faster. And speaking of Gallatin, you made someone mad in Gallatin when you did your top 10 list. I saw on Twitter somebody, definitely put a chip on the shoulder of the Gallatin, some of the coaches and some of the players. So, hey, good job riling up the troops. It's something you've done it with Capital. So now you're moving on to Gallatin. So nice work.
Yeah, I'm never going to hear the end of what my thoughts are on the Capital helmet itself.
What are those thoughts, Anthony? Let's dive into that.
Oh, we can spend a whole episode ranking helmets if you like. I think we have to save that for another time. Yeah. We got plenty of it for an episode. I think another game for me, actually, no, before we do that, before I go to my game, I kind of want to talk about, because the Gallatin Hellgate game was also on my list as well. And speaking about Hellgate, and I'm going to take it from their perspective, they got some really good football players coming back. No question about it. Obviously, you're going to miss a guy like Riley Wooster. You're going to miss a guy like his leadership, what he was able to do on both sides of the football. Man was a tackling machine, as well as able to run the football, make plays, throw the football. But watch out for Ian Finch, who's going to be a junior this year, one of the top receivers last season. I believe had over 800 yards receiving. I want to say had over at least – I want you to either had 7 touchdowns or over 7 touchdowns last season. Really, really impressive young man at wide receiver. So he's going to be a weapon for whichever quarterback starts at Hellgate. And then you look at another guy, Braden Terzo, a really good corner, really good defensive back for Hellgate. He was going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then also look at a guy like Jacob Sweatman, their running back. Again, Raleigh did a lot of running last year. I think Jacob's going to get more carries and he's going to get more looks. I don't know what their offensive line is going to look like this season over at Hellgate. I'll talk to Coach Morris about that at some point. But I think Jacob Sweatland could be in for a really big year. He's athletic. I think he's fast. I think Hellgate's got some dudes to watch out for this season. Again, Hellgate's kind of a mystery team. They had a great season last year considering where they had been before, and I'm sure they're looking to build on that even more so this year. So kind of seeing what Hellgate would have looked like post Raleigh would have been really interesting for me as well in week number 1.
Yeah, definitely. Those are definitely good points, and something you are all seeing here with Anthony. He's the savant of Montana AA football, where he just knows everybody. So I'm sorry that I'm not dropping names left and right, but
I can't drop names for everybody.
So yeah, I think he's a good quarterback, and then Anthony goes into everything, including his future Wonderlic score. So there you go.
I would actually fail that. I think not that I've ever taken it, but I don't know if I very well on.
I saw your SAT score. Let's be honest.
Hey, it got me in. Another game for me is I'm going to add Sentinel to this one, but I think Sentinel versus Senior. I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I think it was last year as well. What does Coach Chris Murdoch have going up against Dane Oliver's crew? Listen, I think Junior Bergen is just an all-out type kind of player here. He was an all-state corner. He was an all-state wide receiver. 2 positions, first-team all-state. That's pretty impressive. I like Johnny McCluskey, another defensive back for them. Michael Olin is on my list of quarterbacks. Again, he's one of 4 that are returning this season for Class AA. Had some pretty impressive plays. And so I look to, I think Senior here, I think they've got a really good football team. Haven't had a chance to talk to Coach Murdoch, but they've got some dudes on their side of the ball. And I've already talked about Sentinel to a degree with the guys that they have. But I think just all that talent in that game itself would be really, really interesting, because you just got a lot of players that are just really good football players sharing the same field.
Yeah, definitely. I think my last one was Capital and Senior, and I'm basing that sum off of last year. It was a 35-30 game. If you don't remember, Parker Johnson, 2 touchdowns receiving. One was 73 yards, one was 7. The other one was 70, and then he had 2 pick sixes on it. He accounted for 24 of the 35 points that Capital scored in that one. Obviously, he's moved on. That group of seniors have moved on for Capital, but I just was curious to see how they were going to match up against this senior school coming into Helena to play at Vigilante to open the season. And just to see those 2 battle it out, I think would have been a lot of fun.
Capital is a team for me that I look at as a real mystery puzzle for us as well, because I think Capital, listen, you talk about history and talk about tradition. I mean, you're talking about go back 10 years, 2010, I think they were coming off a state championship and coming off maybe their 7th appearance in that decade and winning 5 championships to go along with it. Coach Mark Sampson leading the Capital program at that time. So I'm really curious because, again, proud and definitely a championship pedigree program. What do they got this year after, like you talked about, so many seniors and that group moving on? Capital's a mystery team because, right now it's just so tough to gauge. Could they be a really good football team once again and find themselves in the mix? Are they going to be a team that's really young and has some growing pains? There's a wide spectrum for Capital, in my opinion.
Yeah, one thing about Capital is Coach Mihelish and his crew will have them ready to go.
Absolutely.
They will not be an easy win, an easy team to beat week in and week out. They're going to give you a lot of fits.
Yeah, as I say, Capital's no fun at all when it comes to when you're trying to figure it out because, like I said, they're a tough program. They're going to give you a dogfight every single Friday night.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about more and more games. If we didn't talk about your team, it's not because we didn't want to talk about them. We just could only pick a few with the time we had. I guarantee you we're going to be talking about every team in the Montana AA as we move further into this season and each week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now time kind of for the wrap up here and what's next. John?
What's next? Hold your breath, man. Hold your breath and hope that we have a conference schedule season that we can get 7 games in. I think that's our best case scenario. Let's get these teams into practice. Let's see how far they can go. And then, really watch COVID cases the next couple of weeks. If you want to kind of get a bellwether to see what could happen with not only football, but all the fall sports, watch the cases day in and day out when you can and watch that curve. If it's going down, obviously that our chances of playing a full, conference season and having all our fall sports going goes up. If it starts going up, then our chances go down.
Yeah, I was about to say it's going to be a battle. And again, hopefully we're able to see it. Because like I said, I mean, obviously the Big Sky Conference announcing what they did on Friday and the fact that they're not going to play fall football again. I thought college was a lot harder to pull off than high school because they got to go to other states. Travel's kind of a pain. Here in Montana, I think it's more more able to do, if you will. And so, like I said, again, both of us cautiously optimistic. And like I said, really, really hoping that we can start on September 11th with the first games of conference. And again, just keep it going.
Yeah. Well, for Anthony Knockreiner, I'm John Kemper. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we will see you on the next episode of The Two Deep.